One of my favorite game directors of all time, Glen Schofield. I don't know if you guys know Glen Schofield, but this guy is, dude, talk about a game director, man. He directed Call of Duty. I believe he did World War II. He did, was it Advanced Warfare? He's done a number of Call of Duties. He's the Dead Space creator, the Callisto Protocol creator. And he's done a ton of different games that I've loved over the years. Well, guys, there's a possibility that he might be done. In an article coming to us from Darren Bonthes of GameSpot, Dead Space creator Glen Schofield says he might have directed his last game in the industry. Dead Space creator Glen Schofield has spoken about the state of the video game industry, revealing how tough times had led to him shelving an idea for a new breed of horror game that he had been working on with his daughter, Nicole. The veteran developer added that he might have directed his last game, the Callisto Protocol, as he had been unsuccessful in securing financial support for his new project after shopping the prototype to investors. It's really sad, man. And the fact of the matter that you have someone like Glen Schofield who has, created incredible franchises, in my personal opinion. I mean, I believe Dead Space, guys, is one of, if not the greatest, survival horror titles I've ever played. I loved Dead Space for what it was. I thought Dead Space was incredible. The first two were, I thought critically acclaimed. The third game was a step in the wrong direction, but Glen Schofield was not involved with that. The Callisto Protocol had a lot of really promising things about it. Crafton released the game early, and Glen Schofield had told them, let's not release the Callisto Protocol yet. And they did not give him the time that was needed. And so the game came out buggy, glitchy, issues at launch, and it really hurt the title. It was kind of like a Cyberpunk 2077 situation within the horror realm. And obviously, the Callisto Protocol was not as anticipated as something like Cyberpunk, so they weren't able to withstand the damages, essentially, that came from that. But nonetheless, here's what I'll say about the rest of this. In a LinkedIn post, Schofield explained that he attempted to secure $17 million to finance the game's development, which would be used to recruit a small team of developers. While there was interest in the game, investors wanted to negotiate for a smaller budget, with some companies offering as little as $2 million. So last month, we decided to walk away, Schofield wrote. Some ideas are better left untouched than done cheap. We had a team of 6 here in the States and a full crew in the UK. Now everyone's looking for work. They're all talented folks. If you're hiring, let me know. So it's a really unfortunate kind of situation here that kind of transpired. But you know what? When it's of I gotta say, as an investor, guys, as I've invested, over the years, if you're trying to get $17 million and you're trying to get $17 million for a new breed of horror game, I'm going to be on the side of, okay, you did Dead Space, and yeah, Dead Space did the first couple of games did really well, but EA states that Dead Space really never turned a profit. I have a hard time believing it, but that's what they say. And the Callisto Protocol apparently lost Crafton money. So if you're looking at just the horror games Glen Schofield's done, he hasn't made money. And so according to reports and things of that nature. So you won $17 million, and it's a new game. It's not even something that you've done in the past. It's not Dead Space. It's not the Callisto Protocol 2. This is something completely new. You would be probably thinking twice about it as well. You would be thinking, I love Glen Schofield. Can we do this for a cheaper amount just so, it's not as high of risk for the studio or for the publisher? Unfortunately, they weren't able to make it work. Well, Schofield added that many years in the industry, he was focusing on his art and writing, but that he missed working with great teams in the AAA space. I spent the last 15 to 20 years making big AAA titles with great teams. That's what I do. That's what I love. But with the industry on pause, AAA feels like it's a long ways away. So I'm back to my art. I miss it all, the team, the chaos, the joy of building something for fans. I'm still around making art, writing stories and ideas, and still cheering the industry on. But maybe I've directed my last game, Schofield said. I hope it's not his last game that he directed, because I love the Callisto Protocol for what it was, guys, especially now when they fixed it, you know, the bugs, the glitches, all of that stuff. The game is incredible. Like, I love it. And their DLC, the Final Transmission, is great, man. It's awesome. You know, it has like a horde mode and stuff, kind of like Gears of War. It's sick, dude. I just think that maybe Schofield needs to, you know, he talks about how the AAA space has changed, and I'm sure it has to an extent, guys, but there's still AAA games that are being made, you know? It's not that the industry is totally on pause. I think that a lot of companies out there are really looking for what are the flagship titles, and we want to invest in those. So I think what Glen Schofield needs to do is get back into the lab of working with, you know, maybe Activision on a Call of Duty, or working on, you know, maybe with Crafton on PUBG. I don't know about his relationship with Crafton anymore, but I'm just saying maybe you got to get back into the lab of what are current AAA titles. I'm not sure. It's hard to say. But the last game Schofield directed was the Dead Space spiritual successor, the Callisto Protocol, at the studio he co-founded at Crafton, Striking Distance. Sadly, the Callisto Protocol received mixed reviews upon release, with many outlets criticizing bugs and performance issues in the game. Last year, Schofield said in an interview that Crafton insisted on shipping the game early after the studio had been promised more time to work on it. Schofield said that he wanted a few more months to work on the game, but the new timeline resulted in several enemy types and features being cut. All I will tell you, okay, and also with the game underperforming according to Crafton, Schofield would leave Striking Distance in 2023 and the studio would undergo multiple rounds of layoffs. Here's the other thing, guys. The other thing about that was, I believe the Callisto Protocol, let's double check. The Callisto Protocol released, I believe, December of 2022. Am I right about this? December of 2022, okay, is when the Callisto Protocol released to the world. December 2nd, 2022. The real issue here was not that, I think that it releasing early, yes, it hurt the game, but this is what hurt it the most. About a month and a half, you know, whatever you want to call it, guys, later, Dead Space's remake came out. That's what happened to the Callisto Protocol. It released early, maybe because Crafton wanted to stay ahead of the Dead Space remake. But the fact of the matter that the Callisto Protocol was releasing around the same exact time as the Dead Space remake is absolutely, without unequivocally, doesn't make any sense to me on either side, right? On either side. It doesn't make sense from EA's perspective. It doesn't make sense from Crafton's perspective. Like, it makes no sense. And maybe Glen Schofield had a Vince Zampella moment where he was like, you know what, we're going to take on the Dead Space remake. You know, the company that I used to work for, the franchise I started, well, I'm going to prove that the Callisto Protocol is bigger than Dead Space or something of that nature. I don't know if he had that kind of ego move, but Vince Impella did that similar type of mindset when it came to Titanfall 2, placing Titanfall 2 smack dab in the middle of Call of Duty Infinite Warfare and Battlefield 1, and got completely mollywopped, and we still have never gotten a Titanfall 3. We got Apex Legends, but we still are waiting for Titanfall 3, which I don't know if we're ever going to get that. But that's a conversation for a different day. What I'm saying is that the issue with the Callisto Protocol was the time in which it did release so close to the Dead Space remake. And yes, it did have some issues. So people were turned off by it, moved on, waited for the Dead Space remake to come out. When in reality, more than likely, the Callisto Protocol should have released later in 2023. It should have came out like Halloween of 2023. Krafton has a ton of money, guys, like backing them. I mean, they obviously have PUBG. They just bought more studios. They're buying more and more studios. Like, they could have waited to release the Callisto Protocol. I'm sorry. But they didn't listen. And the question now is for all of you. Is Glen Schofield done directing games? Was that his last game that he ever directed, that being the Callisto Protocol? Let me know what you guys think in the comment section down below, and let us know your thoughts.